What's the first home you ever had? Of course, there's no right answer here. On your own, right? So obviously, your first home you ever had was provided by the inside of your mother, right? That'd be a good one. But other than that, I mean, I've been in my book, I've been like keep going after a theme that goes on in there is like there's another line early in the book about I call it the book like it's not mine, right? Like the book, right? In the book that is about how so many belief systems have cast aspersions at our underlying biological nature. What a weird form of self-loathing is the line, right? That like it's amazing how much the body's been dissed for so long and how in love we've been in with our mental capacity. Because it's, it separates us somewhat from other creatures on the earth, kind of, But so that line, but also when you get back to the first home you ever truly had, it's your body, right? Like you were for sure a body before you were an emerging mind, before you had language. You were what I love about little kids like, 0 to 2, is that one of my favorite experiences to watch them get run, do. And then they are doing, and all of a sudden they're laying down and they're asleep. Like they literally go until they drop. Like they're so directly honest about what they are, right? And like one thing about a baby, a very small baby, it's like there's only 3 things that can be wrong. You can tell this to a new parent. Basically, they're going to be hungry, they need their diaper changed, or they need to burp, right? Like there's only 3 things that can ever really be happening because they're incredibly direct, right? Like it's a level of honesty that you will never achieve again, right? And I love that, right? But isn't it interesting that I'm betting that when you thought about the first home you ever had, you didn't think about your body, right? You kind of thought about your first home or your childhood home or whatever. And like, I think that's interesting that we don't identify. So the body as fundamentally as it is, right? Where we kind of look past it right away, which not to get too deep in yogic philosophically, but the senses, especially the mind, is an organ that faces outward. It has to work really hard to learn how to go inward. It's kind of like I often think about it as on the model of your eyes, so your eyes are always going outward to let things in, right? That your mind, and think about a baby as it's forming into language, they end up learning language and learning interaction by having an outward relationships. Like if a baby isn't held enough in the first year, they're going to have attachment issues, right? And they're likely often, according to early trauma theory, right, is that they'll have a greater difficulty regulating because they literally weren't held enough. They weren't swaddled enough. They weren't, right? They didn't get enough boundary as their mind is forming outward, right? Period in that, again, backing up to what's the first home you ever had. Another line I have said a lot over the years is bringing the mind home to the best home it'll ever have, which is still your body, even if your body's not doing what you want. So it's not just the best home your mind will ever have. It's your first home, right? So finally, back to the Lumineers, right? I belong to you and you belong to me, right? And although that puts it on equal footing, the truth is that you emerged out of your body. Like, so one of the opening lines in my book is something like, one of the first two short chapters is, our bodies preceded our minds. So if you believe in evolution at all, right? And look how much human beings have tried to elevate the mind as transcendent beyond the body, right? That we have a non-corporeal blah, 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 blah. We're special. God chooses us, blah, 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 blah. All attempts to elevate what emerged out of the body biologically, in terms of evolution. And yet we go by it. So final piece, I love hey, ho. I love how that, hey, the song,
Yeah.
it goes all the way through, right? It's like planting a flag, right? So when I heard this morning, I belong to you, you belong to me, like, hey, ho, like, let's start with what's truthful. Because yogis are uh, are supposed to honor the truth. So sit up straight and tall. Start to feel more rather than less. And by the way, man, with the amount of trauma my body's absorbed, with the amount of violence it's absorbed in terms of accidents and broken bones, there are times where if I were to talk about my first home, I would say my closet's a little messy. I got some issues in my house, right? Seems like no matter how much I clean it up and get it all clean, it tends to gravitate back to a disorganized state, right? And it's not my body's fault. And that's a hard thing. When I've been hanging out with people with all levels of disability for as long as I have, it's really easy for the mind to blame the body for its situation. Right. And it's like one of the things that was a big realization in waking that basically is a fundamental tenet of mind body solutions was a realization that I had, which is my body never asked for what happened. It didn't. So that's when you hear me say things like, it's your body that stays faithful to living. That even as it ages, Judy, you have your hand up?
Wouldn't that mean your body is always your home?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's not my first home. It is my home and there's no other.
For sure. And isn't it funny that lots of human history has been to try to separate from the body, right? And that's not to say that the mind is not an amazing instrument. It's a stunning thing that's developed. It just kind of steps right over its source or its home, right? And it's like, huh, and has done so for thousands of years. Interestingly enough, probably coinciding with the emergence of patriarchal religions. Again, another interesting little thing to go, that's curious. All right, so back to the hey, ho, plant a flag in your body, sit up straight and tall. Especially you, Michael, for God's sakes. Don't think I'm not watching you, Michael. I'm always watching you. Always watching you sitting there going, well, he just stopped talking. All right. So symmetry, like balance, each foot on the floor, each sitting bone on this chair seat, the tip of each shoulder, the empty space on each side of your neck, the empty space behind you. Soften your jaw, the inside of your mouth. Let the emptiness and the fullness be part of your yoga pose. Don't forget your nervous system is wired for interoception and proprioception. And the yogis are telling you that what's inside and what's outside is actually the same if your goddamn mind can just quiet down. If it doesn't try to dice up the world. So there's a feeling of lightness. If you can find the ground, trust the earth, practice some symmetry, soften the organs of perception, quiet the mind down. Prana is lighter more than it's heavy. We have access in our nervous system to a lightness here that transcends direct reality. I can see why we fell in love with it and tried to call it a soul. It's just that whatever, maybe your soul's accessible through your nervous system. I have no idea. Soften the skin on your forehead, around the temples, again, the inside of the mouth, relax the belly to relax the throat. And be so grateful that you get to very gently lift your chest and spark towards life. You're not sentenced to the ceasing for as long as your body lives. Find your body's boundaries so you can be in awe of the expanse. You have a midline through your spine that centers your version of the experience, and your body keeps it alive. It's literally awesome. And it's your home. Bring your hands into prayer if you can, stay on balance. Find the midline. So where I've spent a lot of times over the weeks about what's happening on the heel of your hand and the palm. But remember, I've been also talking about how your hands and the inside back of your sternum need to be connected. Feel each sitting bone and feel and let there be the unknown space between your sitting bones, which is the midline through which your spine travels. Keep that connected to where the heel of the hands and the fingers touch. And then let the unknown part of the center of your palm open to it and know that you can move the skin there. And all of this is connected to the inner edge of each heel. As you have your midline, feel the empty space that envelops you, and your life force travels right through it, through your spine. It's a miracle. It's your first home. Let go of your day and prepare your mind to do yoga. Stay patient. Reinvigorate through the midline, through the emptiness that is manifested as your spine. Honor the universe by broadening across your collarbones, spreading the space between your shoulder blades. Hit down, rise up, start to occupy your space with a little bit more intent. Not just surrender, because we're going towards asana. Good. And then release, bring your hands down to your thighs, palms up. Sternum up toward your chin, chin down over your sternum. People that know more than both of us think that this is a really important position. Have you explored it like it's a miracle? Have you explored it like it's infinite? In this position that activates your spine, watch how the breath caresses the fingers of your spine, your rib cage. As the inhale starts to expand the intercostal muscles in your ribs, notice it, and exhale and lengthen your spine so that, as you know, this is one thing I believe, as the inhalation expands the rib cage and extends the spine's energy out into the world, then on exhalation, it comes back to the midline and lengthens and extends the spine. So one of the things that I was trying to get across to the reader, which I don't know if, unless they have a yoga practice, they would know, or even can experience, is notice that the undulation in your rib cage, which is your fingers of your spine, actually opens a connection to your legs. This is one of the things that's happening in standing poses. You start to realize a dynamic connection between changes in your rib cage and sensations of grounding in your legs. All this is happening before we're moving because your body's your first and best home. Good. And then release. It's so, when you think about it this way and practice it this way, it's such a stunning failure to have shunned the body so deeply as human history has. Downward facing dog. Talk about falling in love with your mind. I think that might be the source of the Greek term hubris, right? The mind falling in love with itself. Right. So I'm lengthening my arms. I'm getting now I want my midline. We're going to do dog pose a little bit differently, but I've been leaning up towards this. I want the midline of my spine to be finding expression through my arms. Okay. So in order to do that and know that, so as I'm just in this position, my hands are on the table, right? My hands are in front of me. You can do it on your thighs too, right? Right. And if I, for a second, let's just pull this apart for a second, right? Hold on, come on out of the pose for a second. Suddenly, I've had too much coffee, right? It's suddenly, the description is going to get pretty intense from a yogic point of view, right? If I'm thinking that the midline of my spine is the door opening to the rest of the universe, this is why they call it Kundalini energy or whatever the hell they want to call it, right? Right. And I want my pose to reflect what's happening to my spine and my breath. Okay. So Peter, start doing the pose now. You're thinking too hard. See, we got a philosopher on the call with me too. And people think too much because they're trying to follow the words, and the words don't matter as much as the sensation, right? All right. So if I want my spine, in this position, I'm just going to pay attention to my breath a little bit and how it's undulating my rib cage. And remember, I've already hinted, and just let it be true. It's not the only truth, but let it be true that the expanding rib cage opens a doorway to my legs, to your legs. Okay. So practice these next few breaths, right, in a way that lets the undulation of the inhalation of my rib cage open a doorway to my legs. The exhalation, on exhalation, I extend my spine. I hit down through my sitting bones and reactivate through my hands, right? All right. So I'm just following that back and forth. Like there's something going on. Now, Again, we're trying to get the legs starting to feel the pranic source of lightness, right? From the rib cage to the legs. Now release for a second. So now, if I'm going to do the same position again, so what I love is when I say, you've heard me say before that yoga poses write themselves. You as a student, we tend to follow the instructions, but they actually write themselves, right? So if I want the energy and undulation of my spine, which has a midline, and then its fingers are expanding with the inhalation, and I'm coming into extended focus on the exhalation, and I want my arms to be part of the pose, right? Put your hands back again, right? So if I'm trying to recognize that feeling of undulating spine, opening in my legs, undulating rib cage, notice on exhalation, the weight on your hands gets a little heavier. Can you feel all of that kind of stuff? This subtle stuff? Yeah. It's freaking crazy and super cool, right? Okay, so now you can kind of imagine that or feel that if I want the energy of my spine to connect to my through my arms, I'm gonna need the anchor of my index mound on the table, right? I'm gonna need that anchor, right? But if I do that too hard and I drop my collarbones, I'm going to lose the energy of my spine. So as I press down to the index mound, I'm going to roll my upper arms up towards the ceiling, which is going to bring the muscle to the bone in my upper arm. I'm opening my palms. But if you really pay attention, that's my spine becoming connected to my arms. Now breathe and let your rib cage undulate with your inhale and exhalation. Your body is showing you the way into asana. If you can feel the pose. Good, and then release. So I realized that was a lot of instruction, right? Was anyone able to follow it a little bit? Thumbs up if you kind of were able to follow it a little bit. Yeah. Can we just pause and say this is fucking miraculous that the body shows shit like this? I belong to you. And then your body responds to your mind's instructions because it's incredibly patient with your failing mind, right? We're going to add more. I'm trying to show you how the pose writes itself if you listen, right? Hands on the table again. So you can see why you might want to lift under your collarbones. And once you do that, though, then you're hitting down through your sitting bones, right? And if you are someone that's been able to do traditional dog pose, the extension from your hands to your tailbones then will tell you in a traditional pose, hold on a second, in a traditional pose, say you're up like this, right? And say these are the legs and these are the arms, right? We'll tell you to spread the backs of your legs, the backs of your thighs, to actually pull the energy of your spine out of your hands. Does that make sense at all? Can you kind of intuitively feel what I'm trying to say? Here are the legs, here are the hands. We tell you to spread the back of your thighs to pull the energy and make it crisper out of your hands, right? So that's why I'm telling you to hit your sitting bones. And in a second, I'm going to tell you in dog pose to spread across your sacrum. What's amazing, here's dog pose again, here are the legs. What's amazing in dog pose is that although you spread the back of your thighs to get the energy crisp up towards the ceiling, somehow your legs anchor you to the earth through your heels. So you're spreading the back of your thighs horizontally, making the energy crisp out of your spine towards the sky, but they're getting anchored by the legs. That's why we tell you to hit your center shin straight back. All right, hands on the, too much information, too much instructions, the student says to the teacher, and the teacher laughs and says, I don't care. I don't care. Learn to live into it. All right, so here you are again. Remember, we're getting this idea of the arms being integrated with the spine, the undulation of the spine, the broadening across the collarbones, the pressing down through the index finger, the rolling the upper arms out, all of this to give expression to your spinal energy, which is your midline, which is your magical energy, right? Now I'm going to ask you to hit down through your sitting bones and broaden across your sacrum. Don't forget to expand your rib cage on inhalation and exhalation. Good news is it's already happening if you're breathing, right? But now I want you to add something even more. I want you to extend from your inner groin to your inner knee to your inner heel. Wait, that's too much for my mind. Exactly. Do it anyway. You're trying to honor your spine in a yoga pose. Good, and then release. You know that the electrical impulses of your spine are going everywhere through your body anyway, right? So is your blood flow is going from your midline out to everywhere through your pumping heart. So you're just trying to make all of your actions for a second be more congruent with what was already happening, which is you're coming through your midline, your life force comes through your midline and expresses to the outer edges. You're just trying to make that deeper in particular postures. Dog pose one more time. Or maybe 11 more times. I'm not sure. Remember, we're trying to get remember, we're going to start through the whole thing now. Right? Notice your breath. Let the undulation of your rib cage open a passage to your legs. Okay? Open a doorway. Now the instructions, like broadening across the collarbones, pressing down, finding the anchor of the index mound, rolling the upper arm out, broadening across the collarbones, right? Now remember, instead of broadening across the back of the thighs, we're broadening across the sacrum. This should open an inner corridor down to your inner heels. This should make you be able to extend your neck in opposition to your tailbone, to your sitting bones. Now the breath still pumps, not just your blood's already pumping, but now your breath undulates your spine's energy and your body receives it through the posture. Good, and then release. Anyone finding those poses kind of taxing? Or is this super easy? It's taxing, right? Takes some work to hit on all cylinders of consciousness, right? Takes figuring out how to let your body teach your mind how to be here. Because your mind is all caught up thinking about all the shit you have to do today, tomorrow, what you didn't do yesterday, right? God, can you believe all the things you didn't get done yesterday? Holy cow. In fact, I'm not even sure why you got out of bed today. You already failed. You're already behind. Can you imagine the stories that your mind tells your body? Oh, for God's sakes. And your body is like the old grandpa saying, or old grandma saying, you're stupid. Take your legs wide. Right? Laughing at the indolence of the youth, right? Which is your mind thinking, right? So I'm rocking back and forth because I want to. I want to watch my spine, my midline, my empty source of my life that my mind can't exactly penetrate, right? I'm like moving it back and forth in relationship to an open base of my spine and spread legs. So I can just feel the dynamic energy of my spine moving through an expansion of my base. So remember, if there are people that are maybe from Santa Fe, don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. And then go up and over your back of your chair a little bit. but keep your legs spread. So to lift in your chest. So I'm starting the last I don't know, 15 or 20% of my book. And I want to start it. I think I'm going to start it with a back bend, right? Come back, bring your legs back together. So we're just kind of, if you want to lift up a little bit and jiggle a little bit so you get a little lighter, because the words create staticness, right, in your body as you have to listen. So whenever you need to, keep jiggling yourself so your mind doesn't get stale, because your mind will make a pose stale, right? So we're moving around a little bit, and I forgot what I was going to say because really smart, but I forgot because I started thinking about my spine. Oh, I wanted to start with the back bend. So I was going to try to get across to the reader that I think after all my years of practice, I think the most integrative action that I've learned from yoga is that if I lift the center and the empty space in my sternum, it integrates with the world around me. It's the greatest act of integration. So teach yourself by contrast, close everything down, drop your sternum. So this is a protective stance, right? This is also how a baby emerges into life, right? Right? Gets real small, crosses its limbs, even folds its arms under like this, right? Gets real small, turning the wrists in, right? Real small, right? And then it starts to open, right? It starts to open and lift your sternum. So, and then go back to the place that we started. If you want to be almost completely congruent with the ceasing, other than the mom's umbilical cord, right? You'd get real small. You'd become like no disturbance on the pond of the ceasing, except you're coming to life, right? And now start to open your sternum. And notice your relationship to the empty space in the room changes as your chest lifts. It's a profound act of integration, right? Now they say, I remember being taught or told that if you're struggling with the blues or feeling a little bit depressed, that back bends help depression. So why would that be? Like, what happens if I drop my sternum and I lift my sternum? What's the transformation? Now, the thing about what people want to say, well, I can be depressed and still do back bends and stay depressed. Yeah, it's not for free, right? It's not like a panacea. It means that the relationship between inside and outside of me, when I'm withdrawn, like when I was scared to come out of my mom's womb, right? When this changes and opens, so why don't we go into spaces with our chest more lifted? It feels vulnerable, so we pull back, right? So this act right here of getting this part of your spine in a different relationship to the space around you, it's in every yoga pose. Then drop it. It's an act of transformation. So what I like about back bends, beyond the fact that they're taxing and they kind of invigorate, right? They literally are taking what yogis sometimes call the seat of consciousness, and they open it like an orange, like you peeled an orange and then you open it up, you do that first like that, and it opens and it maybe even squirts you in the eye. Let this next back bend be like opening an orange and having it come out into the world without it being led by your mind, right? Let your spine come into the world, right? So there's all sorts of ways. We're going to first isolate the back bend just right here, right? And then we're going to make sure we include the earth and the sky and a whole bunch of other stuff, whole different energy. So right here, I'm putting my fingertips like a suction cup, like my fingers are going right around the center of my sternum. And I'm going to try to figure out what's interesting is it's almost impossible to directly move your upper thoracic. Everything else has to work in order for this to open up. So I got my hand here and I'm going to try to, in order to open the space underneath my fingertips, everything else has to work. You notice you can't do it directly. You have to move the inner edges of your shoulder blades. You have to broaden across your collarbones. You have to lift up. All this, everything has to come, many things have to come in concert in order for this to open to where I've got it, right? And it turns out, so, and this is one of those lessons I learned watching in a class. A lot of people confuse opening their sternum with lifting their collarbones, which isn't or an overusing the low back, right? Like gripping the low back to you anchor in the low back and then you lift under the collarbones and you think you're moving your sternum, but they're not the same, right? Although a good back bend will do both of those things, right? Eventually. So take your thumb and your index finger, and push it down on your collarbones. So I'm holding down here. Take your other hand if you can. So I had to lean back against my chair to stay on balance. I'm putting it right across the crest of my rib cage, right across my solar plexus. Now, with that extra reference for my not very observant mind, but the extra reference makes me be able to isolate the space in between and now work to lift between these 2 points of reference, work to lift the space in between. I call these like chest kegels, right? It's hard. Do that a few times and you'll generate a whole bunch of heat. So lift the space between the two. Does anyone notice that when you lift that space directly, that you're not breathing very well? That you can't take deep breaths and be lifting that space directly, all right? So do a couple more and then try to coordinate it with your inhalation. So let your inhalation help it. So I wanted to get you a layer below your inhalation and then have your inhalation help the lift and then allow the drop and help the lift and allow the drop. And can you feel everything working between your shoulder, everything starting to work? Now, can you see why you broaden across the collarbones? Because in a way, broadening across the collarbones is a superficial way of trying to do all this at once. Now, what's tricky is to do all this and include your legs, right? Now release. Thumbs up if you're kind of following this, okay? Now, this is where you're getting a real workout, right? So there's this weird line I've thought about for a long time that I read one time from Biggest Angar that said there's a difference between irritating the heart and exercising the heart, right? And I mean the physical heart, right? Not its symbolic function, but it's both. And he would say that cardiovascular, and this isn't from a Western point of view, this would not be true, but cardiovascular exercise just for the purpose of cardiovascular exercise, where I watch people that are not joggers jogging and they look like they're a train wreck. They look like they hate it, right? In my mind, that's what I think about irritating the heart into good health. And his point is if you learn to exercise the heart in backbends, that's a better exercising for the heart than irritating it. But irritation can cause the blood flow. So there, it's a both and, right? I would say what we just did here, did anyone experience any heat when we really went after that? Did you feel that? I think that that's exercising the heart, right? And it affects the autonomic nervous system, right? All right. So now we're to back bending. So this extra, if you can back bend a little bit right here, and this is really hard for me because I'm fused right here. My vertebrae are fused, right? So back bending in the upper thoracic, which is where I broke my spine, right? Back bending through here is difficult. I'm for traumatic reasons, I'm afraid to be right in the center, right? But it's also where the vertebrae are the most knit. All right. So when I go back over my chair, there's a reason why I tell you not to push into your chair, but go back, go up and over the back of your chair. So we're just going to try to stay on the upper part, right? So feel the back of your chair and lift away from the back of your chair, right? And then go up and over. And figure out where you should then lift under your collarbones. And if you do take your neck back, then take it back. But make sure you're being smart about, don't go to it too fast. A lot of people take their head back too fast, right? And if you do that, you'll get a headache, right? So go up and over and only take your head back as far as it's congruent with the lift of your sternum, right? So you're going up and over. Good, and then release. So you've heard me possibly say that, oh my God, it's 10:48. You've heard me possibly say that I introduced the term everywhelm in my book, but like prana goes in every direction at once, right? Including, this is actually in my book, it goes forward and backward in time, but that's a whole other problem, right? Whole other issue. Right? But it literally goes in every direction at once. And asana is trying to represent how that happens with body positions or express how that happens. But as a microcosm, I want you to do it with the center of your chest, right? So hit back against the back of your chair. Now, this is why I tell you, like, they might tell you in a back bend to lift under your collarbones and broadly horizontalize them, right? That's an outer instruction. At the same time, try to broaden the space between your shoulder blades, right? Open this skin. Have you ever heard me say, open the rib cage like a lion's claw, opening it up? So we're doing all this, trying to get that this isn't just a this way back bend. It's a this way. It's like a starburst, right? Opening of the center of the chest. So I'm going to now come back out of it. I'm going to try to ground and try to find the earth here, right? First, I'm going to do it with my forearms. I got armrests here, but I want to get a sense of grounding. So I'm grabbing my legs, right? Because the earth is going to be what protects your low back. But we're going to try to do it isolated first up here, but I'm still wanting to set the conditions of grounding, right? So I'm here. I know that this isn't just a this way back bend, it's a starbursting back bend, right? And so I'm going to go up and away from and then over the back of my chair while letting this burst this way out into space, right? And then when I get all that, then lengthen your chin back, but make sure you're lengthening the back of your neck, not just the front of your neck, because otherwise you lose the earth. Good, and then release and come back out of it. So for if you're one of those people that takes your head back too fast, I want you to recognize something, that you actually discard parts of the earth to do that. So just like for a second, unless you get dizzy, just take your head back like quick, like it's no big deal, just from your neck, right? Notice how that has almost nothing to do with your whole body. But you'd want in a back bend after this is opening, you'd want your head to your chin to go up as an expression of your spine, right? So one more time. Now be careful, you're getting dizzy from doing that. The neck part is not the chin part is not the most part of the pose. And the way you keep it safe is if you make sure the back of your neck is lengthening while you're taking your chin back, right? So now, again, I'm grounding with the earth on my legs, right? I'm going to go back to the back of the chair. I'm going to open. Now I'm going to go in every direction this way as I'm going up and over the chair, right? Feeling underneath my collarbones, letting the back side of my shoulder blades feed the space right in here, right? And go up and over. And as I lengthen my neck, as I take the chin back, and I let my breath, don't try to take a deep breath, open the corridor to my legs. I keep my mind still in the bottoms of my feet. And I bring the very deep part of my sternum into the world around me. Good, and then release. I don't know about you, but this class is making me thirsty. It's hitting on a lot of cylinders. All right. This class goes till noon. Don't worry about it. You don't have anywhere to go. I'm joking. So now we got to add the legs quick. Right? We kind of did here. So remember, if you lose the earth in a back bend, you're going to strain your spine, right? So first put your hands on your knees and remind your brain and your mind to hear the articulation of your knees back into your rib cage, your femur bones back into your, I spoke too fast, your femur bones back into your hip socket, which actually goes into your rib cage, right? And notice when you do that, your chest lifts. What's crazy is that you need to do that and extend down through to your heels when you're back bending. You need to do what's impossible for your mind to conceptualize, right? Put your hands on your thighs. Draw the energy back from between your knees, your abdomen slightly back to start to feed your chest. Put your hands on your thighs. Start to push your legs away. That's going to start the action of your chest going up and over. But as you do that, right, go up and over the back of your chair. So now you're going to be pushing more overtly down your femur bones to your heels while you're drawing the energy up this way. Make sure you spread like the starburst, right? The center of the chest. So you may not back bend as far when you include your legs, but it's got more integrity. Broaden across the collarbones. Now, without taking a deep breath, let the undulation of your rib cage keep you connected to your legs. Good, and then uncoil. Whew, I'm glad for the uncoiling. Now I'm going to come forward and place my forearms on my thighs. I'm looking for the earth, right? In a second, we're going to twist to try to get some of the stress out of your back. But I'm looking for the earth first. Now, hopefully, with all this movement of your spine, can you feel that humming in your whole body? Make sure it's in your whole body. Or maybe even you might think of it as fatigue, but it's not really fatigue, it's something else. It's wholeness that includes your emptiness. That's what a good yoga practice hopefully does. And then come back up. Take your right hand up, be in more space. I'm actually tickling the underside of the chin of the sky, my fingertips, by going down towards the earth, and then I'm going to the other side. I'm taking the arm behind me. And now I'm wanting to really feel this twist. Don't try to win the twist, because we're twisting right near the end of class. This is not a winning pose. This is a sensual pose. So lengthen your spine, hit down through your sitting bones, lift up through your chest so you make space between the vertebrae. Inhale, lift up is how the outside of the instruction is. But you're trying to do it before, just with your body, and then add in your breath. Exhale, revolve. So we're just trying, then release quick for a second, and then come into it a little faster, right? So we're just trying to get a sensual feeling back to the spine, back again, right? Don't try to win, try to feel, right? I'm about to do it for the 5th time, right? Okay. Not trying to go farther, come back to center. Not trying to win, just trying to feel. Left hand up, tickle the sky, right? Exhale. You only get to tickle the underside of the sky's chin, by the way. Right? Expand, hit down and rise up. Broaden. Their starburst of the back bend is still there. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. But try to do it sensually. Right? Don't just squeeze the crap out of your spine. It just worked for you really hard. And then release a little bit. And then do it again, trying to emphasize your mind's ability to feel the sensualness in movement. And then back again. That's it. I'm doing it for the 3rd time, coming into the twist. And then back out of it. 4th time. And then back out of it. 5th time for symmetry. And then back out of it. I'm gonna come forward just because I want to after what I've done. I want to place my elbows on the table. Because I want the grounding of my bones to show the rest of my body where it is. Right? That helps you. I'm going to want to keep it open, I can tell, but this might help some of you. Depends. Do what actually works. So, without doing any of it, visit the whole back bending part of the class. Travel through time, using your body as a touchstone. I might be doing it a little tiny bit to travel through it. So it's not just my imagination, but I'm using my body because I want the whole class to come with me into Shavasana. All right. Now I got to figure out how to best receive my chair, the support of my chair. Right. So I'm going to lighten up a little bit. I'm going to practice symmetry. Each foot, each sitting bone. I got each of my forearms on my armrests, right? And then I'm going to, at one point, just surrender to the support. Like, let the chair hold me up, right? I got nothing to exert. The invisible hand doesn't just change market forces, it actually supports you. Fall into it. It's the earth. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Your mouth becomes a cave. You're deeper than the asana. That's where you need to receive. Your mind, for your body to fully let in support, your mind literally has to quiet down. Connect the space between your ears, your inner ears. Relax your belly to relax your throat. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Practice being an observer without change. Thank your body. Thank it again. Your body is your first, best, and only home. It never leaves you. Start to increase your breath, slightly deeper inhalation, slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes. Let the light in. You will go outward with most of your day. That's what you're supposed to do. But don't forget, in an instant, you can close your eyes and have the inward space. You're never not backbending. You're never not in child's pose. The energies are here the whole time. Asana just brings them forward. All right, everybody. Namaste. The spirit in me bows the spirit in you. I'll stay on for a while if you have any comments and reactions. Leslie, is that a black cat?
A tuxedo, yeah.
Yeah, tuxedo black. That's awesome. It made me think of, and no doubt, see the cat, maybe you all didn't know, but the cat came right during Shavasana and wanted to get between the energy of the screen and Leslie's Shavasana, right? But another obscure reference, does anyone know the song The Warehouse by Dave Matthews or the Dave Matthews Band? And the warehouse is the body and it's your warehouse and blah, 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 blah. And it's empty and it's full, but there's a line about black cats in there. So you want to hear another weird song by Dave Matthews? It's on my favorite album title ever, Under the Table and Dreaming, right? Which is like as a little kid at my grandparents' farm, and then they're having Sunday dinner and it went on too long. I used to get under the table and listen to all the conversations from under the table because I couldn't just sit above the table for that long. So I'd go under the table and dream, right? All right, everybody, have a good day. Hopefully, this part of you, the center of your chest, is a little bit more out there in space and you're not afraid of it. Don't be afraid. It's okay. This part of you is more resilient than your mind is, just so you know. It's your mind that falters. Right? You're right. It's not this part. This is the transcendent part. And it comes from your body.